Now come to the next part of the text. On Wednesday night, my father and his two friends arrived at the Indian restaurant on the first floor of the Oberoi Hotel for dinner at about 10 p.m. So they arrived for their dinner at about 10 p.m. They had barely sat down when they heard gunshots in the lobby of the hotel. The terrorists, armed with AK-47s, grenades, and plastic explosives, had entered the hotel and were executing everyone sitting in the ground floor restaurant. Realizing the situation, the staff of the restaurant my father was in asked the guests to exit quickly through the kitchen. As the guests started to rush into the kitchen, one of the terrorists burst into the restaurant and began to shoot at everyone there. At this point, my father was in the kitchen and along with his two friends rushed to the fire exit. They had barely descended a few steps when they were trapped from both ends by the terrorists. So as the terrorists started attack the people at the ground floor, the restaurant's staff asked all the visitors to exit through the kitchen, and when they were all trying to exit through kitchen, the terrorists already arrived there, and they began firing at the kitchen door, and some of them also lost their life at the time of exit. And then the lady's father and his friends tried to exit through the fire exit door, and suddenly they faced that the terrorists were there on the upper part, and they were also coming up from the ground floor. So they were in the middle of the attack in the both sides. So what happened to them? The terrorists then rounded up anyone who was still alive, about 20 people, and made them climb the service staircase to the 18th floor. On reaching the 18th floor landing, they made the people line up against a wall. One of the terrorists positioned himself on the staircase going up from the landing, and the other on the staircase going down. Okay, so these terrorists captured 20 alive people and took all of them to the 18th floor of the building, and there they asked these people to stand in a row, and when they stood, the two terrorists took position, one from the upper part of the landing and another to the down part of the landing, and they would now start firing, just as we see in films or in the stories of it, where the captivated persons or the prisoners used to be beheaded in a row or killed before a gunfire, and they would be killed also like by the terrorist. Then, like a scene from the Holocaust. Holocaust means a kind of mass killing, as we find in Hitler's Germany. There were several cases of Holocaust. They opened fire on the people simultaneously. My father was towards the center of the line with his two friends on either side. Out of reflex or presence of mind, he ducked as soon as the firing began. One bullet grazed his neck, and he fell to the floor as the bodies of his two friends and several other people piled on top of him. The terrorist then pumped another series of bullets into the heap of bodies to finish the job. This time A bullet hit my father at the back of his hip, bent double, crushed by the weight of the bodies over him, and almost suffocating in the torrent of blood rushing down on him from the bodies. My father held out for 10 minutes while the terrorists left the area. Okay, so what happened to the lady's father? The terrorist first lined all the people and then started firing. But for his reflex and for his luck, the lady's father ducked the bullet and it just did not hit him into his head. It just hit his neck. Then he fell down, but his two friends were killed at once by the bullet attack, and they fell over him, and his body was under the weight of his two friends whose bodies were over him. And then the terrorist again attacked all the bodies which were on the floor. But suddenly this time a bullet hit the lady's father at the hip point, and he pretended that he died. And then the terrorist thought that all the people were died and they would leave the place. And everywhere there were blood coming out from the injured person and from the dead persons, and this type of blood-stained floor, the lady's father was just lying. Next, come to the next part. When he finally had the courage to wriggle his arm, he found that there were 4 other survivors in the room. That is, including the lady's father, there were 4 other survivors. That means 5 people were alive after that attack. Among the 20 people who were forced to come to the 18th floor, 5 were alive till then. Okay? My father moved just enough to allow himself room to breathe and then lay still. The survivors spent more than 12 hours lying still in the heap of the bodies, too afraid to move. They constantly heard gunfire and hand grenades going off in other parts of the hotel. They feared that any noise would bring the terrorists back. And after approximately 12 hours, the terrorists returned with a camera and flashlight and joked and laughed as they filmed what they thought was a pile of dead bodies. Then they moved to the landing below, where they set up explosives. On their departure, my father decided that it was too risky to remain where they were because of the explosives. Along with the 3 other survivors, he climbed the rest of the stairwell and discovered a large HVAC plant room in which they decided to take shelter. They spent the rest of the siege hiding this room, trying to get the attention of the world outside by waving a makeshift flag out of the window. They drank sips of dirty water from the air conditioning unit to survive. Now I will explain how the lady's father and a few other luckily survived themselves, and see the explanation in the next video.